Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our virtual seminar, Budgeting 101. My name is Barbara Agan, and I'm the Director of Member Engagement and Education with ABCO Federal Credit Union. Before we get started, I just want to say kudos to all of you. You know, budgeting is one of those things that we all sort of know how to do it, but we don't do it, or we don't do it well. So, you know, the fact that you've found this topic interesting shows that you do have a concern for your financial future. So kudos to you. So let's take a look at our agenda. So basically what we're going to cover is, what is a budget? The benefits of creating a budget. Where do you begin? We'll go over a sample budget worksheet, and then we'll also look at a few examples and kind of troubleshoot where there may be some pitfalls that could be corrected. We'll share any tips and resources, and obviously I invite anybody who has any information they'd like to share with the group. That would be awesome. And then just some general Q&A. So what is a budget? I mean, basically, a budget is a simple plan that allows you to manage your income and expenses. You know, when you talk in terms of work, we usually talk about an annual budget, and even on a personal basis, you need a budget for the year, and usually you do that with a calendar year. But for the purposes of planning, it really does make the most sense to start off with a monthly budget. And if you can keep yourself on track month to month, then you'll find yourself okay at the end of the year. So the benefits of creating a budget is that it allows you to save for the future, future goals. So, think about those things that you want that maybe you don't have, and the plan to get there is part of your budget. So, maybe you're looking to buy a car or a new car. Maybe you're looking to get married or buy a house, maybe save for furniture or some reservations, or take a really cool trip. All of those things, again, when not planned, can seem very overwhelming and unreachable, but the budget helps you with that plan. Okay, it also prevents you from overspending, because again, when you're mindful of what your purpose is and what's coming in and what's going out, it makes it a little bit more difficult to cheat. Cheating would be putting a spotlight on bad behavior. It's interesting, but I find, at least with my adult children, when they became of that certain age and they started driving, they're hitting their debit cards for food all the time. And I think many people find themselves in that habit. So, if you're that person that goes through the drive-through to get your latte every day on the way to work, it's only a $4 latte, right? It's only $4, right? But $4 a day ends up $20 a week, which ends up over $1,000 a year. So little things do add up. Okay, alleviate stress because you have a plan. So sometimes the greatest fear is fear of the unknown. It can paralyze people. They don't know what to do. They just feel stuck. So this will alleviate that. And at any point, if anybody wants to chime in, if you can find the little hand signal, you could raise your hand and I'll try and acknowledge you and have you come and talk to the group. So additional benefits of creating a budget, it can break the paycheck to paycheck cycle. So sometimes you need a little nudge for that. Helps you get out of debt. So when you're really looking at all of your financials, you can kind of see, well, gee, if I just put away a little bit every paycheck towards, maybe it's a loan, maybe it's credit card, you've got a plan and it can happen. I know a lot of times people think either if they can't save a large amount of money in one shot, or they can't put a big chunk against a debt, then they feel like, well, what's the point? Well, there is a point, because slow and steady does work. Okay, and also can end fights about money with your parents, your partner, whoever. The good news is it's never too late to start good habits, and habits will change over time. I'm no budgeting expert, but you know, you find a system that works for you, and you have to stick with it, and you adjust it as needed. So one of the things you need to identify if you're seriously looking to save for a goal or to cut back on expenses to balance your income versus expenses is identifying the difference between wants and needs. And when I had first put this slide together way back when, in my mind, I had definite, you know, well, housing is a need. Food is a need. You know, many things were a need. Maybe the last three, eating out, designer clothing, and travel, well, those were wants. But when I was thinking about this the other day, I said, okay, well, housing, including utilities. Sure, we need shelter, you know, but where you're living and how you're living, you know, that could be a want rather than a need. You know, if you bought a house that was too big of a house for you and you're struggling and you found yourself what people call house poor because you have the house and you can only afford to pay, you can't do anything, that's not a good situation to be in either. Food, obviously we need food. Do we need, you know, rich, expensive, top of the line cuts of meat every day? Probably not. I know about five to 7 years ago, I used to always shop at my local Stop and Shop. And when I switched to ShopRite, I saved a lot of money every month, and I never would have believed it, but it was true. There's still certain things I like better from Stop and Shop, but it really pays to kind of, you know what you're spending on things. Transportation, obviously, you know, the vehicle you choose, you want a good vehicle, but, you know, maybe you can't afford a Lamborghini. And if you can't, then maybe you don't need to be driving one. Insurance, definitely we need. Eating out, you know, again, balance. If you're finding you're eating out all the time and then you know, don't have money for bills or to pay down debt or to put towards your goals, then maybe you would need to cut back. Designer clothing, again, you know, it's probably more a need. We need clothing. You know, if you don't have a lot of money, then maybe you don't run out. You know, some people, my son is like, he'll spend hundreds of dollars on sneakers, but, you know, he also has money put aside because, you know, it's like, don't spend all your money on sneakers and ask your mother for money. You know, you kind of have to balance it and make sure that you can afford what you're spending. Otherwise, there are ways to stretch things and make things last. And then travel, again, you know, you can travel local, you can travel, well, right now, I don't know how much you can travel outside of the United States, but, you know, again, as far as the money, you know, you want to balance that and be cautious of that. So where do you begin when starting a budget? Well, in order to start, the first thing you really need to know is your monthly income after taxes. You know, so if you get paid weekly, then you would want to put together, you know, 4 weeks worth of pay. If you're not salary, so it's not the same pay every time, then you would want to estimate your lowest possible income figure. So, you know, if sometimes you're working and you get tips, don't add in the tips. That would kind of be gravy or icing on the cake. So what you're looking at here is, I have picked a career, an accountant with the annual salary of $49,600. That's the annual salary. So then the monthly gross pay is listed there, $4,133.33. And then, you know, those are the sad things that come out of your paycheck. And I know for first-time workers, and I don't know that we have anybody here who's that young, but that's a whole big shock, you know, between gross and net. So obviously, you know, Uncle Sam takes out taxes. So you've got your federal and state income taxes come out. You pay FICA, which is your Social Security. You pay towards Medicare. And then the other two are optional. So health insurance premium, so that would be per month. And if $150 per month, if that's your contribution towards healthcare, that's actually really good. I know many people who pay more. And really most companies, not all, but most companies, they'll either pay at least match what you're paying, or, you know, they'll pay a greater portion for your health insurance. And then the, retirement plan, whether it's a 401k, whatever the case might be. Again, that's optional. Usually a good place to start, if you can afford to, is 3% of your salary. Usually they max out at about 6%, and the company will match you. So it's good. And it's really never too early to think about retirement, because holy cow, like yesterday I was in my 20s and look at this, a few years away from being 60. So in any case, so you can see there's a gross difference between gross and net pay. Okay, so we look at the net pay. Okay, so then next thing you need to do is identify what your fixed and variable deductions are. So your fixed expenses are, those things that are the same every month, whether you're paying rent or mortgage. Is it a car payment, or are you paying a regular fee for public transportation, your auto insurance? And even if a lot of companies, you can pay it lump sum, or you can, you don't have to pay it monthly, but you should know and be putting away whatever the monthly cost is towards that insurance. If, for example, you're paying it every 6 months. Your student loans, if you're in the process of paying, and, cable, internet, cell phone, those things. Okay, variable expenses would include, anything that you probably do regularly, but it's not a set amount every month, but you still will at some point need to have an idea. So for your groceries, probably the best bet would be to kind of average what you think you spend on a monthly basis, or what you spend a week. Is it $100? Is it $150, $200? Really kind of looking at what the staples are that you really need to buy. Dining out, how often do you go out for pizza, order in? And I would say dining out would probably include DoorDash and all of that. It's purchasing and eating food that you did not prepare from items that you bought at the store. Your gas and gas, I guess if you're doing the same commute and that's basically what you drive, that might be more of a fixed rather than a variable, although as the gas prices seem to fluctuate, that can change as well. Okay, you've got clothing costs, and utilities. So some of the things, and again, I tend to kind of give tips along the way. So with groceries, some people are more frugal than others. And I have one friend, my neighbor, when her husband was working, because he recently retired, she would stand in line, at the cold cut counter, and she would get 6 slices of turkey. And because she made him 2 turkey sandwiches for lunch during the week, and I guess he had other things the other day. And I always just, and that's actually very practical, because I would probably, lazy me, would go to the pre-cut turkey, try to find the thinnest one, and then hopefully eat it all, but end up throwing it away. So that's one area. Another friend of mine will not buy certain things unless they're on sale, especially things like laundry detergent, which tend to go on sale at least once a month. So you stock up, otherwise you could pay twice as much for the same thing. So there really are ways to cut money out of that budget. Utilities, I always laugh, obviously you want to be comfortable, but if it's, we have a cold front and it's getting down to 30 degrees and you're jacking up the heat because you're walking around in a t-shirt and shorts, well, maybe you kind of moderate that a little bit and you put on a sweatshirt and long pants, So again, and those are always the kids. The kids always want to dress the opposite and blast the air and jack up the heat, but that's what they do. Other items not to forget about are things like, the holidays, holiday spending, birthdays, annual vacations. The holiday and vacation club accounts are perfect for that. I know I used to do that back when I, had the first job, and it would come out of my paycheck, and it was back with the coupon book, remember, because I'm old. And, it was like $20 a week. And when the holiday came, I had $1,000, and it was awesome. Now it's kind of, it's automated. Obviously we don't give out coupon books, but setting up that holiday club is a great way to save money and not think about it. And then you have it. if you don't have a club or you always miss the time when you're supposed to start a club, even just opening up different savings accounts and just allocating them, you can set up nicknames. You can do a lot of things if you use the online banking tools or the mobile app where you can choose to have certain accounts not show. So if you really only wanted to show your checking and your savings and maybe your credit card or loan, and you have 4 other savings that are specially allocated for other things, you can set it up so you don't see those, because that is another good tool, which is out of sight, out of mind. I know one person who would kind of do their best to budget throughout the year. It was a relative, and at the end of the year, whatever, anything that went over what they had budgeted for came out of holiday spending. So, if it was a banner year, everybody got really expensive gifts. And if it wasn't such a good year, it had to cut back because this person was determined to stick to her budget per year, no matter what. And very commendable. Can anybody think of anything else that I haven't talked about that are, items that should be on a budget? I mean, if you want to chat a response, and anybody's got anything they'd like to add. Hearing none, I will move on. Okay, in addition to the other spending, you want to identify any outstanding debt. So it's, there's the actual payments that you're making, your fixed payments or the amount you pay regularly on your debt, but also knowing how much of that debt you have to pay off is helpful as well. So here we have a sample budget worksheet, and I will provide the actual Excel spreadsheet along with the slides and a video recording of the session probably by Friday. So if we take a look, you've got your, and again, so you'll get this spreadsheet and you'll be able to edit it. So if there's certain things that you would want to add onto your expense side, you could certainly do that. So we've got things listed here. You've got your rent, mortgage and taxes, home insurance, utilities, water, sewer, phone, internet, car payment or public transportation, auto insurance, childcare. So all of those things. Your variable expenses would be your groceries, your gas, clothing, dry cleaners, any car maintenance or parking. And then under other, I have haircuts, pet supplies, gifts, donations, entertainment, dining, vacations, nail spot, and gym. And again, so something like vacations, that might even be how much you're putting aside, for a vacation. So all of those things would add up to your monthly living expenses. And again, you would be able to edit those as needed to better fit you. And then on the income side, your monthly take-home pay, if you have any other income coming in, roommate, second job, child support, alimony, Social Security, that's your total monthly income. And then you would take your monthly income less your monthly expenses equals your amount available for debt. Okay, and then so if you had actual debt, so you had credit card balances and student loans or things like that, you would want to list who your creditors are, the balances, so the total amount that you owe, and then what your regular payment is. And again, that's not kind of factored into the other totals, but it's a good visual to know what you're working towards. Okay, so then down on the bottom, total monthly debt payments, and then the bottom line. So your income minus all your expenses equals your net. And keep in mind, wherever the zeros are, once you plug in the other figures on the Excel spreadsheet, it automatically calculates for you. So it really is a good, cool tool. And, if you look online, there's a lot of different tools that can help you manage your budget or to keep track. But at the same time, a simple pen and paper can do the same thing. It's a matter of sitting down and really writing everything down. Okay. So obviously, if you're spending more than you earn, then you need to make some hard choices and decide what to cut back on. If you have money left over, then you want to take a look at what would be the best options. You know, there's always that saying, you want to pay yourself first. So, you know, if you can put a little bit into savings, if you have money left over, you definitely want to do that. If you don't have money left over, you really kind of have to look and see why is that, you know, and what could you do to kind of put that back in balance. You know, another good technique is, if you are getting close to paying off a car, take the money, your car payment, and allocate part of it to maybe make additional payments on outstanding debt, and part of it to automatically go into savings. Your regular money that you're, you know, your free money that you're playing with doesn't change and grow. Because trust me, you know, if you have an extra $200 or $300 a month and you don't do something with it, you will find a way to spend it. It's very easy to spend money. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. Let me just get my blown up sample. Okay, so sample one, we've got our accountant, and he or she is single, shares a 2-bedroom condo. So when you look at the expense side, so the rent or mortgage, $700, that looks, you know, so they're sharing rent. So the rent is most likely $1,400. Again, home insurance, if it's not included, would be a portion. Looks like for utilities, that also would be a shared expense. The phone is personal, car payment, auto insurance. Okay, then you get down to the variable expenses. And you look at those items, the clothing, gas, dry cleaning, car maintenance. And that might not be that you actually spend $25 a month, but maybe it's the portion you put away for regular maintenance, like the oil change and having tires rotated and things like that. And then the other expenses. And again, you might have different ones. You know, here there's hair, pets, gifts, donations, entertainment, dining out, nail and spa. So you see the monthly take-home pay less the monthly expenses is $55.82. There's one Visa, which has a balance a little over 1,000 with the monthly payment as $31.02. So you take that payment off, and it's $24.80 for what's money that's left over at the, you know, at the end of a month. And that's, of course, if there's no surprises. So in my opinion, that's really not a lot of a cushion. So if we look back and think, well, what could we do here? Or, you know, where could this person cut back? $325 is not extravagant, but it is kind of a little high for one person, you know, so maybe they would really need to kind of revisit, you know, what are they doing and spending on, and maybe could cut back a little bit. Clothing, $100 a month may not be that much. I mean, depending on your stage of life, I mean, if you're starting out in a new position and it's a new job, and maybe you don't have the clothes that, you know, you need for the job, you might have to clothe up to get started. But once you kind of have your basics, you can do a lot with what you have. I know I wear like the basic black with a shell shirt a lot, you know, and then in the winter and summer, I can throw scarves. You know, women can accessorize probably more extravagantly than men, but men also with ties, you know, ties can kind of change up the look, ties and shirts, and, you know, the same suit could kind of go many different ways. One thing that I might question would be, excuse me, the car payment. You know, depending on if you got this car several years ago, you know, maybe your credit wasn't that good and you're paying a high interest rate. One idea would be to perhaps think about refinancing, and maybe you could lower that payment. Other things, even though the balance on the credit card is not that large, if that credit card, maybe you could do a balance transfer and get a lower rate on, you know, so that would even lower the rate further, or your $30 towards the payment would go a lot further along the way to paying off debt. So those are, again, just off the bat, just some thoughts about this one. And if anybody has any questions, you can chat them, and I guess Mel will read them, or whatever the case might be. If there's no questions, we'll take a look at the next sample. Okay, sample number 2, physical therapist, married and a homeowner. So again, you take a minute to take a look at the expenses. So you've got a mortgage. Obviously, the home insurance is included because they wouldn't be paying zero, so it's part of that payment. You've got your utilities, phone, internet, car payment, auto insurance, etc. Groceries. $400 a month is rather frugal for married couple, but okay. Moderate expenses, nothing over the top. You can see on the right-hand side, as far as the net income goes, pulls in a good salary, has money available to pay debt. You take off the student loan and the ABCO credit card, and this person still has $593.06 left at the end of the month, which is great. That's a great cushion. Options to do there could be to pay a little bit more down on the debt, just a teeny bit each month, which will help decrease the balance faster. Again, in this example, we're not talking really about what this person has in their checking or their savings, but if they didn't have money in savings a lot, now would be a time to kind of build that up. Another thing is if your company offers a 401k and you have a little bit of money extra, that might be the time to say, well, I was putting 3% away. Well, maybe I want to up it to 4 or 5%. So it's a little bit per pay, doesn't impact you at the end of the month, but starts going towards your retirement, which again, most companies will match you a certain amount up to a certain percent. So, a little bit more you put away, and the company's matching it and helps it to grow. Okay, so the next example is criminal justice employee, single, 1-bedroom apartment. So rent, mortgage, taxes, $750. Depending on what area you live in, that might be doable, or that might seem low or high. Utilities, phone, internet, car, auto insurance. We've got the groceries, clothing. We've got a lot of extravagant expenses here. Minimal and personal care, dining out, $300 a month towards vacation. So then when you look at the monthly income, you can see, first of all, spending more than the person is making. Okay, they've got the credit card, 2 credit cards, which, have significant balances on them. So the $360, that's the minimum monthly payment. So you can see the bottom line is this person is spending far more than they're earning each month. So that's a red flag. That's not good. Chances are realistic numbers wouldn't have even numbers for the credit cards, but this could be a case where you're kind of living large. You've got your credit cards, and maybe you're using your credit cards to supplement your spending. Maybe a lot of that dining out is happening. So if we were going to take a hard look at, how do we turn this around, there are some things that can be done. First of all, that car payment is real high, depending on, the type of car, maybe it might make sense to, sell it and downsize a little bit. That's a big car payment. Definitely the dining out, I think that would need to cut back, and the vacations, maybe you chop that down. So I did worked out revisiting. So again, lowering that car payment. Maybe you sell the car because where you're working, you're in a city, you can do public transportation. You don't really need a car right now, and it's kind of hurting you. So you sell the car and then you just start doing public transportation. Actually, I didn't even think about that. If you sold the car or you bought a real clunker, if you sold the car, you wouldn't need car insurance. So that would be another plus. Clothing new, again, like I said before, to kind of get yourself set up if you had nothing, but, once you're kind of established, if you're looking to cut back, maybe that's that thing, that's a want, not a need to keep buying new clothes, or you need to shop frugally on occasion. Cutting back on the dining a little bit. All of those help. So, a few things to change. And the bottom line ended up being a positive $254 a month. And again, playing with numbers, but, again, unless you have another way of making income, and that's something else that, we didn't really talk about, but if, you're in a position to do side jobs, or, maybe you mow someone's lawn on the weekend for cash, and, cash in your pocket, that doesn't show up here, but it can count. So, and again, maybe what I'll do in the interest of time, when we finish up here, for those of you that attended the session, I will send you the budget worksheet, which, the blank budget worksheet and the presentation, like as soon as we finish. And that way, if you're kind of excited and want to get started, you can. And then when the recording's finished, I'll send that out as well. So the first time you go through it, even though, you can kind of allocate what you think you're doing for the month, you really do want a pen and paper, because, unless you're somebody who uses the tools properly. Let's say if you use your credit card for everything, there are ways to allocate, is it food, is it gas, is it, utilities, what you're paying. I believe you can also do that. If you use bill pay for everything, you can allocate so that you can kind of take a look. I'm one of the dinosaurs that still uses a check register, but even with that, you still have to take the time to kind of really figure out. You'd want to look at a month's worth of history somehow, however you write it down, or you look on online banking and you kind of look through your purchases, and you want to group together all those items that fit in on a budget, because a lot of times you just don't know what you're spending until you take a look. It reminds me of about 30 years ago, when I worked for a bank and we did a time management seminar. And one of the takeaways was that you were supposed to pick any given day, and you would have your pad and your pen, and you would just kind of like, you would write down what you were doing in 15-minute intervals, so that at the end of a work day, let's say you had this huge project that you had to work on, and you were like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't get that done. I've been working on this all day. Then you look at your, everything you jotted down, you're like, wow, like I spent this much time checking emails. I was on the phone. I had meetings. There were a lot of things you were doing that were taking you away from your priority. And when it comes to budgeting, that same thing can kind of come into play. You don't realize that, the lottery tickets, the latte, he stopped and got some Dunkin' Donuts, or, picked up a sandwich, those little things add up. I keep telling my daughter, I said, I'd love for you to sit down and tell me how much you spend in a month just on food, because I think it's an eye opener. So again, you go through your rough estimate, that you track your actual expenses for a month, and then you kind of set a budget and kind of set a goal. So have some tools that you can use, to kind of manage and keep yourself on track. Because you want to budget both for short and long-term goals. So short, if you're at a point where you do have money left over, you want to think about short and long-term savings goals. And I would say one excellent short-term goal would be, to see how fast, if you don't have it already, how fast you can have $1,000 of it's in another savings account. It's for, you know, an emergency, or it's for unexpected. And a long-term financial goal would be to have 3 months salary in savings. And I know that can sound really overwhelming, but again, that, you know, we've had kind of an unprecedented situation where a lot of people found themselves in dire straits. So, you know, again, you don't want to say, oh, I'll never get there, so I'm not going to try. You say, okay, that's a heady goal, but, you know, let me see what I can put towards it, and just kind of, you know, especially tools like direct deposit from your payroll, or if your paycheck goes into your checking account automatically, and just set up a transfer that just goes from checking to your savings, or set up a different savings, just money that kind of moves without you thinking about it. And that's really where you'll be surprised at the savings and how it happens over time. I did list some additional resources. I mean, you know, NerdWallet, that there's a lot of financial tools out there. I love all the dummy books. Those are good. I know I listened to 1015 and they've been talking about that Steady app. That's something new. I actually downloaded it yesterday, but I didn't really feel like hooking it up to my bank account, so I didn't really take it much further. But, you know, there's a lot of tools out there. You just kind of have to take the time and make that the priority. So at this point, I'd like to open it up if anybody has any questions. And someone did comment that NerdWallet's a good site. Yeah, you know, when you kind of just type in budgeting, budget, you can kind of sift through some things, but the internet is really a powerful tool that we all hold in our hand. I'll just give a minute in case anybody wants to type anything. I'm going to sort of close out the session, but I don't want anybody to disconnect yet, so just stand by. So again, I would like to thank you all for joining our virtual session tonight, Budgeting 101. And I hope that you're able to find some takeaways that will help you with your financial future. I will tell you that if you are interested in having a financial checkup, or perhaps you've been thinking about applying for a loan, be it car loan or home equity or a mortgage, and you're not sure what you could afford, or what, you know, where you might fall in with being approved, we could certainly arrange to do a financial checkup with you. If it was lending related, I would put you in touch with a loan officer. If it's a general, you just want to touch base about your situation and want some tips on perhaps, you know, how to cut back and how to get yourself on track, you can certainly email me, and you'll have my email. Well, you have my email already, but you'll have it from the follow-up. And we'd be happy to set up an appointment and work with you. So thank you again, and have an awesome rest of your day.